All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we will cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network from our studios and corporate offices in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streaming around the world at classic1220.ca. My first guest tonight, X Zone Nation, is Mark Anthony. He's known as Mark Anthony, JD Psychic Explorer, and he also sometimes, for us old fogies who knew him way back when, is the psychic lawyer, as he's a fourth-generation psychic medium who communicates with spirits. He is an Oxford-educated attorney licensed to practice law in the state of Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. And that's just a little bit of a teaser for all you new listeners who are saying, wow, is that guy for real? And yet, you know what? He really is. And I've had the pleasure of having him on the show and calling him my friend for a number of years now. So, Mark Anthony, welcome back to the X Zone. How's it been, my friend?
Oh, thanks, Rob. It's always great being here. I love working with you, and the X Zone's awesome. So a lot of things are hopping and popping for me. Hey, and first off, I want to congratulate you on the success and recognition of X Zone and Realm R Network.
Well, thank you, Mark. As you know, it's been an uphill battle for most of the time, but thanks to you and the great listeners of the X Zone Nation, we keep on growing and going stronger. So thank you for your kind words.
Oh, my pleasure. It's an honor to be here.
Mark, you and I have talked many times, and the last time you were here with us, you were telling us about the touring of the cities that you were going to be doing, and I believe you went to Los Angeles. Where were you? In Cucamonga? No.
It was really great. I was in Sedona for the Sedona Ascension Retreat, which was a really fantastic group of people. There was over 1,000 attendees. And then I was in San Rafael, California, which is just north across the bay of San Francisco, and at the new Living Expo, which was amazing. Then I spoke at the Edgar Cayce Field Conference on Reincarnation in Tampa, Florida, and then I was at the Reincarnation Summit for Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach. And I'm gearing up to head back to Arizona in August for the Helping Parents Heal biannual conference, and that's such an honor to be able to speak there. And it's also it's uplifting and enlightening, but it's also very heart-wrenching because there'll be over 1,000 parents there who are known as shining light parents, because they've lost a child. And the reason that we have termed them shining light parents is because the light of their child's soul shines ever brighter in eternity. And then in October, I will be at the Ancient Mysteries Conference at the Edgar Cayce Association in Virginia Beach. So this has been a very busy year. I've also got a number of online events coming up in July. I've got online light circles. In a light circle, those are limited to 6 people each, so everybody is guaranteed a reading. So I connect the attendees with their loved ones in spirit. And And Rob, if people want to find out about all these events and sign up for my newsletter, I invite everyone to visit my website, which is afterlifefrequency.com, just like my latest book, The Afterlife Frequency.
Let me ask you, Mark, when you were studying law way back when, did you ever think that your life would take this turn? And that you'd be
No.
going all these places, meeting all these wonderful people, and being such an advocate for the work you do?
I never thought I would go public with my psychic and mediumistic abilities. I mean, this has run in my family for generations, but I figured I was going to spend the balance of my lifetime practicing law, trying cases, and focusing on that. But the one thing I've learned, Rob, for all of us, is that life takes us on twists and turns.
Mm-hmm.
Think of your life as a journey in a boat, and you're heading down a river. Sometimes it's smooth sailing and clear waters. Other times there's rapids. Sometimes you go over a waterfall, like when a loved one dies. And I have found that it's best to flow with the river instead of trying to struggle against it. So the way my life has been, I've had all these amazing opportunities and experiences, but I don't take any of them for granted. And I've come to realize that all of us are on our own unique journeys.
You know, Mark, I'm a dad, I'm a grandfather, I'm a great-grandfather, and when you're talking about the parents who've lost their loved ones, their little ones, how does that affect you, and how do you keep on track? Because I know that you're a very, very empathic person.
I think my background as an attorney definitely helps with that. And I know of the jokes people make about attorneys about, we're all cold-blooded, vampiric, blood-sucking monsters. But the thing is, most of the attorneys that I knew and who are and were my friends were also very sympathetic to the pain and anguish of your clients. But we must also maintain a professional demeanor, because when you get emotionally involved in the pain and suffering of your client, then you're not able to maintain your objectivity. And it is always very emotional and very draining to work with parents who've lost a child. And as a medium, I facilitate communication with my clients, the parents, with their beloved child or children in spirit. But I have to focus on what I'm doing, stay professional, because I don't want to falter and not be able to do the very best job I can do as a psychic medium.
You know, you were talking about your experience as a lawyer, and that is how this is what you do to maintain your professionalism as a medium. But as a lawyer, you represent your client, or let's take it into a criminal side, because I think our listeners would get a better drift of what I'm saying. If you're the prosecutor, you can't be the defense counsel. And when you're the defense counsel, you can't be the prosecutor. But you, as a psychic medium, when you're out there, you're on this side of the bench for the defendant, as well as on the other side for the prosecution. You've got both sides that you're working with. How do you just justify that happiness, that equilibrium that is so necessary? I agree with you. As a lawyer, you have to take your client's best interest at heart. But here you've got basically two clients, one on this side of the veil, one on the other side of the veil.
As usual, Rob, I love the way you frame questions, and what a great analogy. Well, in the legal context, and just for the benefit of the listeners, my life's focus now is on mediumship, because I constantly get people asking, if I will represent them in various cases. And I appear on shows like the X Zone as a legal analyst and to comment on high-profile cases, but I'm not actively taking any law clients. As an attorney, you're an advocate for either the plaintiff or the defense. But as a psychic medium, instead of being a one-sided advocate, I'm a mediator that facilitates the communication between both sides. And the important thing is for me to keep my ego out of it, because the readings that I conduct, readings are not about me. They're about the client and about facilitating communication between someone in this world and their loved ones, like you say, on the other side of the
Right.
veil, what I call in the afterlife frequency.
It must make you feel, I can't even express how I would feel if I had the ability to bring both sides together so that the pain, the anguish, the grief that they both share is, I would imagine it's turned from grief to joy.
I thank God today to have been given this ability. And Rob, I look at myself as the custodian of this ability. I've met some mediums and they let it go to their head, which I can see how it would be very easy to do. And some of them, they think we're like the X-Men and we have these superpowers. But the thing is, everybody has skill sets.
Right.
Some people are, some people are,
Whoops.
like you're a brilliant broadcaster and you're able to put together this entire X-Zone Nation network. Other people are really good musicians, artists, et cetera, et cetera. And my skill set may be what some people consider a bit unusual, but the skill set of being a good parent is every single bit as important as what I do. And so we have to look at it like that we all have different abilities. And let's face it, Rob, wouldn't it be boring if everybody was the same?
Oh, it would be, yes.
We all look the same, act the same, react to stimuli the same. We'd be like a school of fish, just sort of jerking around like, oh, there's a predator, everybody over here. Oh, there's too much light. Oh, there's something to eat there. And we're not like that.
Yeah, well, yes. Can you just imagine a whole world full of Joe Bidens or Donald Trumps? No.
And we're all yeah, unfortunately, there are some people whose uniqueness, they allow it to go to their head.
How long have you been doing this, Mark? I've got about 30 seconds before I have to go to break.
In the professional context, I would say better part of 20 years, but my mediumistic abilities surfaced when I was a toddler. So this is as much a part of me as the color of my eyes.
Mark, please stand by. Exonation. Mark Anthony is our special guest. If you'd like to find out more about Mark, if you'd like to participate in any of his online events, if you'd like to get copies of his books, visit his website, afterlifefrequency.com. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone. Mark Anthony and I will be back on the other side as we continue here in our studios on the X-Zone Broadcast Network in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streaming, classic1220.ca. And welcome back, everyone. Walk Like an Egyptian by the Bengals. Have you ever seen those early Egyptian movies where they move their necks and their hands and their shoulders at the same time? Wow, I don't know how they do that without getting a stiff neck, I'm telling you that much. Mark Anthony is my special guest. His website is afterlifefrequency.com. And Mark, before going on air, you and I were talking about the curse of the Tut tomb.
Oh, yes. I'm working on a presentation for the Ancient Mysteries Conference, which is entitled The Secrets, Mysteries, and Curse of King Tut's Tomb. And it's really such fascinating subject matter, Rob. Tutankhamun's tomb was discovered in 1922 by archaeologist Howard Carter. And Howard Carter was such a character. He was a quirky, temperamental genius. At age 58, he was a confirmed bachelor. As far as we know, he never had any relationship with anybody. And he was tenacious, temperamental, impatient, abrupt, rude, didn't want people asking him stupid questions. And luckily for him, he met Lord Carnarvon, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, who was wintering in Egypt because he had a lot of lung problems. And Carnarvon was a bit of an armchair archaeologist and decided to fund Howard Carter's expedition to find a mysterious missing pharaoh known as Tutankhamun.
Now, when you were giving the description of Mr. Carter, you used some very, very strange adjectives there. First of all, he was a confirmed bachelor at the age of 58, and then you said that, you know, he was kind of quirky, this, that, and the other thing. And I was thinking, well, yeah, that's what happens when you don't have sex.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably. And Carter, though, but it took that type of personality, because the thing is, Lord Carnarvon, and here's a fascinating fact about him. He lived in Highclere Castle in England. Mm-hmm. And Highclere Castle is where Downton Abbey, BBC's mega hit, sort of an upstairs, downstairs melodrama about a British aristocrat family living in the 1920s. Well, the thing is, Highclere Castle, all the scenes of Downton Abbey are filmed there, except the basement scenes. And the thing is, the basement is where the staff would work.
I see.
Now, the reason that none of the scenes were filmed in the basement, according to rumor, that is where the Carnarvon family's private Egyptian collection is housed. And and Lord Carnarvon's great-great-grandson, who's now the 8th Earl of Carnarvon, still lives at Highclere Castle. And as far as I know, the basement is still off limits.
Did they ever find out what the cause of the curse was, and if the curse was real, or was it just a myth?
Well, there's some fascinating things about it. November 4th, 1922, Howard Carter lurches awake. Now, Carnarvon's been paying for this expedition since 1914, and nothing's turned up. All he's got are bills, and Britain's recovering from World War I, and Carnarvon said to Carter, I'm cutting funding. Howard Carter begs, just one more season. Carnarvon reluctantly agrees to this. Well, November 4th, 1922, Carter wakes up, and he had a house, which is not far from the Valley of the Kings, because that's where they were searching. And the Egyptian staff at his house was used to him being rude and abrupt with him. But in the past 2 weeks, he'd been in a better mood because he bought this canary, and it was in this little golden cage, and it would sing to him.
Aww.
In fact, one of the Egyptian staff said that this bird is good luck, and the bird, who Carter named Bulldog, became the mascot for the expedition. And one of the staff members said, this bird will bring us good luck, and inshallah, which means God willing, we will a tomb filled with gold will be found. Well, that day, Carter gets dressed, heads to the excavation site. Nothing's happening. And he's like, well, what's going on here? And he was worried that maybe somebody had gotten killed, but then he realized they found something. And an excited worker showed him in the sand, they found a step, the beginning of a staircase. So they started clearing it away, and it was 16 steps down into the sand. And as they cleared away the sand, they saw a door. And Howard Carter's heart almost stopped, because the door was still sealed. It had a clay seal on the door handles that was intact. Every other tomb in the Valley of the Kings, and there were dozens of them which had been discovered by that time, all of them had been plundered thousands of years ago, but this tomb bore a seal, and the seal was the name Tutankhamun. Well, at almost that precise moment, back at Howard Carter's house, the Egyptian staff heard some horrible sound, and they ran into the sitting room, and to their horror, a cobra had gotten into the birdcage and was devouring the canary. The Egyptian staff, they may have been Muslim, but they are also Egyptians, and they realized that the goddess Wajet, the cobra goddess, was the protector of the pharaohs, and they knew this was an evil omen.
Now, was this back in the United Kingdom at the palace, or where?
No. This was Howard Carter's house at the Valley of the Kings.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry.
So this happened. So now the Egyptian staff is freaked out, and of course, the fact that the symbol of the Egyptian pharaohs, a cobra, has devoured the mascot of the expedition. And Carter's not happy about that, but he telegraphs Lord Carnarvon. 3 weeks later, Lord Carnarvon and his daughter, Lady Evelyn, are there in Egypt. So they remove the seal from the door, open the tomb doors, and now there's a corridor filled with all sorts of debris and sand, and it took an entire day to clear that out, and they came to another door. And the seal was intact there. So Carter drills a hole in the upper left hand of the door, and he had a candle because he wanted to test the air. And so when they opened up a little hole in the door, air from the tomb leaked out, and they noted it smelled lightly of oil and perfume. But this is air nobody had breathed for over 33 centuries. And Carter is looking through the hole, and Lord Carnarvon was sweating, and he said, "Can you see anything?" And the only words, Rob, that Howard Carter could get out of his mouth was, "Wonderful things." And then Lord Carnarvon and Lady Evelyn were gazing through the hole in the door, and everywhere they could see the glint of gold.
Unbelievable.
Oh, it was amazing. So I know I'm getting a little bit dramatic about that.
No, go ahead.
Pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't until the following February when they actually opened those doors. And the reason for that is Howard Carter got the best of the best. He got the best photographer in the world at the time. He got the best archaeologist from the Met in New York City, from the British Museum. I mean, he brought in the top team. And so they opened up the tomb, and it took 10 years to get everything out of the tomb because they were very meticulous. They numbered everything, photographed it from several different angles. And but here's what started happening. After the tomb was opened, Lord Carnarvon, who loved being the center of attention, he was the polar opposite of Howard Carter. He sold the rights to the story to the Times of London, the exclusive rights. Well, this was the biggest news story in the world, and every media reporter was there, and they were shut out. Well, the rumors of the cobra eating the canary had circulated among the media, so one unscrupulous reporter said they found a wooden plaque in the tomb that said, "Death will slay with his wings whoever disturbs the rest of the pharaoh." So now there's rumors of a curse. Shocker comes in April of 1923 when Lord Carnarvon, he's at a hotel in Cairo, and he'd gotten a mosquito bite on his face and it got infected, and all of a sudden he dies from blood poisoning. And at the very moment that that Lord Carnarvon died, all the lights in Cairo went out for a few seconds. So now the media is really empowered, but then other people started dying from lung infections, from suicide. A number of British aristocrats that entered the tomb ended up dead not long after. At least one of them was murdered in England by an occultist, a Satan worshiper who believed that the tomb had been violated. And by 1929, Time magazine reported that over 22 people who either worked on the tomb or had visited had all died under mysterious circumstances. So people were dying, but rumors of Tut's curse were flying, and the media was having a field day with this. So that's where the curse of the tomb has come from.
Mark, we've got to go to a break in about 30 seconds, but wasn't there also some talk about something to do with the tomb of King Tut aboard the fateful night the Titanic sank?
No, because the Titanic sank in 1912 and Tutankhamun's tomb was not located until 1922.
Fake news at its best.
Fake news at its best. Yep.
Stand by, my friend. You and I have to take our break at the bottom of the hour in X Zone Nation. My guest this hour is Mark Anthony. And if you'd like to check Mark's website out, if you'd like to get involved in any of his online events, if you'd like to see where he's going to be speaking, your town, city, or event near you, or if you'd like to get copies of his books, they're all available at www.afterlifefrequency.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. And we're coming to you from the X Zone Broadcast Center in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, right here on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streaming at classic1220.ca. Don't go away. Mark Anthony is my special guest this hour, X Zone Nation, www.afterlifefrequency.com. And we were talking about King Tut, and, I mentioned what the curse was all about. And, Mark, since the curse, or the results of the curse, has there been any scientific investigation into what actually caused this, what seems to be coincidental curse, or is there any explanation whatsoever?
Oh, there was all kinds of really wacky and interesting theories at the time. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes, he was also a psychic medium, he and Lady Doyle, and he believed that the ancient Egyptian priests had summoned elementals, which are non-human spirits, like the jinn, and people could call them leprechauns or jinn or sprites, pixies, fairies that were guarding the tomb. Other people thought that maybe radioactive uranium was spread throughout the tomb by the ancient Egyptians. But more recently, scientific studies have found two different varieties of fungi, the Aspergillus niger and the Aspergillus flavus. And these molds, these fungus, have been on mummies, and they also grow on grain and bread. And the thing is, within Tutankhamun's tomb, there were several containers filled with grain and bread that had been, there for thousands of years, because these were offerings, and they would put food in the tomb because, the spirit, when the mummy resurrected, would be able to feed on these things. So it's very possible that a lot of the people that were in the tomb were breathing in these spores, which caused them, to get very, very sick and die. We also have to realize that this was Egypt in 1922. And the thing is, this was years before any form of antibiotics were available, and people died from the common cold would kill you back then. So the fact that they were working in conditions that weren't the healthiest conditions in the world, and in a country at a remote location and at a time when medicines that we take for granted were not available, the fact that many people died should not be that big of a surprise.
What have we learned about the opening of Tutankhamun's crypt? Did we learn anything about the lifestyle that they had? What did we learn about him and the way he ruled? Do we have any other aspects that we didn't know about except on the giant screen about Tutankhamun?
We learned quite a bit, actually, because no pharaoh's tomb that was intact had ever been found before. And we were given a glimpse into the wealth, opulence, and power. The thing about Tutankhamun is his father. See, Tutankhamun lived during the 18th dynasty of Egypt. And a lot of people, they have a misconception about time frames, and they think, oh, Tutankhamun had something to do with the pyramids. The pyramids were 2500 BC. Well, that's when they were constructed, meaning almost 46 centuries ago. Tutankhamun lived 33 centuries ago. Cleopatra died in 30 BC, 30 years before we switch over to, from BC to AD. And if you look at the immensity of Egyptian history, Cleopatra is closer in time to the debut of the iPhone in 2007 than she was to the construction of the Great Pyramid in 2500 BC. So when you start looking at that, it's like, really? Yeah. Cleopatra is closer in time to the iPhone than she was to the Great Pyramid. And in between the two of them comes Tutankhamun. And at that time, Egypt was a polytheistic society. They believed in many different gods. What was really strange was Tutankhamun's father is known as Akhenaten, the most unusual pharaoh in history. He believed in one god. He believed in the Aten, the sun, the spiritual aspects of the sun. And it appears that he was a religious fanatic, an extremist, and he banned the religion of ancient Egypt and imposed his own religion, belief in one God, on everyone. Now, we could spend hours talking about Akhenaten, but the thing is, the priesthood hated him. And the priests were the ones who collected taxes. They ran the country. They were the bureaucrats. Akhenaten also ticked off the military because he refused to go to war. He was always trying to be peaceful. So the question is, was he some whacked out religious fanatic or some type of peace-loving hippie, 3,300 years ago? We'll never know for sure. But when he died, when Akhenaten died, his memory was all images of him were chiseled away. Any mention of him was eradicated, because at age 9 years old, Tutankhamun becomes pharaoh. And the first thing he did was order the restoration of the old religion. Now, obviously, a 9-year-old didn't do that. He was being manipulated by powerful forces from behind the throne. On inspection of his mummy and getting into the sarcophagus, there was this giant granite sarcophagus. And when they lifted the top off, they found a coffin. And so Carter and his team were lifting the coffin out and couldn't believe how heavy it was. Well, it was the first of 3 coffins. The first one was wooden, which was gilded with gold, like gold leaf. The second one, also wooden and gold leaf. The third, they were shocked. It was solid gold. It was something like 250 pounds of solid gold. Now, that was overwhelming enough, but when they took the coffin lid off of that, there was the famous death mask, and that's probably the most recognizable symbol of ancient Egypt.
Yes.
Is the gold death mask of Tutankhamun. And then on the mummy, there was over, I think, 125 pieces of jewelry. Here's some interesting fact. This is a very X-zone fact, is there was a dagger on the king's body in recent analysis, and it was iron. And this was the height of the Bronze Age. The Egyptians did not have iron readily available. But this is very unusual iron because of its high nickel content. Metallurgists have examined it, and that type of iron with that amount of nickel in it only comes from meteors.
Wow.
So it appears that the dagger that Tutankhamun had on him was forged from metal recovered from a meteorite that had hit the earth. Now, I think that's pretty interesting.
It is. It truly is. When we look at, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, Mark. Go ahead. I was going to say next. I'm enthralled.
Yeah, there was over 5,300 objects that were removed from the tomb, and we could spend years talking about them, and people have for over a century. It was jam-packed with chariots, board games, thrones. So we got an idea of the type of life. Clothing, a lot of it, when it was touched, disintegrated because it was so frail. But a number of sandals, sandals that I was looking at the picture of sandals, and I've seen a lot of these objects up close. I wasn't able to touch them, but I've been in close proximity to them. But then the mummy itself, Tutankhamun was the byproduct of generations of incest. In ancient Egypt, Pharaoh was considered a living god, and only gods could marry gods. So by the time he rolled around, there had been at least 8 generations of inbreeding. And recent analysis, DNA analysis of his mummy, revealed several disorders. He had clubfoot and scoliosis. He had Kohler's disease, which is a bone necrosis, which causes poor blood supply in the bones of children. He had Klinefelter syndrome, which is a genetic condition in males who have an extra X chromosome. He had Marfan syndrome, a genetic disorder affecting fibers that support the heart, blood vessels, and skeleton. He had Froelich syndrome, which is an endocrine disorder affecting males and caused by lesions in the hypothalamus. And there were traces of sickle cell anemia, temporal lobe epilepsy, and it looked like he'd also suffered from pneumonia and malaria.
Oh, Lord.
This was one sick kid. He died at age 19, and he had clubfoot, scoliosis, and within his tomb were over 100 walking sticks, all of which had been used. So basically, you had a severely physically disabled pharaoh. More mysteries arise. We have enough time in this segment, or should we break here?
I've got about a minute. I've got about 1 minute.
There are some people who think that, well, maybe he died from these diseases. Mm-hmm. He certainly had plenty of them. There are others who think that he possibly may have been murdered. So let's revisit that after the break.
Sure. Where did Nefertiti fit into all this?
Nefertiti would have been his stepmother because she was the wife of Akhenaten, who was the pharaoh that blotted out all the religions save his own. And there's speculation that Nefertiti may have briefly reigned as pharaoh between the death of Akhenaten and the ascension to the throne of Tutankhamun, because we know there's one, possibly 2 mysterious pharaohs that may have ruled for 1, possibly 2 years in between Akhenaten and Tutankhamun. I know this gets really, really in depth, but Nefertiti was a very pivotal and influential character during this time, and also considered the most beautiful woman in the world. And when you see statues and depictions of her, you can see why.
I understand that many people who are interested in ancient aliens look at Nefertiti as having an elongated skull, and there's a petroglyph of her or a hieroglyph of her with 2 children on her knees, both having elongated skulls. Have you had any discussion about that in your past?
I have, and recently, years ago, but through DNA testing, it is believed that Nefertiti's mummy may have been found. Also, it is believed that Akhenaten's mummy has been found. And in the artwork of the period of Akhenaten's reign, he and his wife were depicted with these elongated heads and their children as well. And also, pharaohs were always depicted as He-Man, bulging with muscles, the ultimate warrior. He was depicted with wide hips, feminine-type breasts.
Mark, we're just going to have to go to our break. We'll be right back. This is so interesting. Thanks for joining us, Mark. Exo Nation, our guest this hour is Mark Anthony, Medium Mark Anthony, and AfterlifeFrequency.com.
When I first saw you, I saw love. And the first time you touched me, I felt love. And after all this time, you're still the one I love. Yeah. Looks like we made it. Look how far we've come, my baby. We might have took the long way. We knew we'd get there someday. They said, I bet they'll never make it, but just look at us holding on.
And welcome back. Hey, you've been doing TV shows or creating TV shows, directing TV shows way too long when you hear a sign by Shania Twain and you actually in your mind see if the final scene before they put King Tut into the tomb. Something's very wrong with this. But I digress. My guest this hour is Mark Anthony, the JD Explorer. He's also known as the Psychic Lawyer. His website is afterlifefrequency.com. You can learn all about Mark on that website, including where he's going to be. You can learn about how you can participate in his online greets and meets. You can also find out all about his great books, and that's at www.afterlifefrequency.com. Mark, please continue. Like I said, I heard Shania Twain start singing this, and the black screen kind of faded into him on the, in his tomb, and well, I've been doing this for way too long, I think.
Well, we were talking about Akhenaten, Tutankhamun's father, and whether or not he had the elongated head and the very feminine type of appearance.
Yes.
And based on a mummy which was located, and due to genetic testing, they know that the mummy is connected to Tutankhamun, very possibly his father. And it does not appear that there's any scientific basis to back up the elongated heads and this sort of feminine masculine combination appearance. So after Akhenaten dies, at some point 9-year-old Tutankhamun becomes pharaoh. The first thing he does is order the restoration of the old religion. Now, obviously, a 9-year-old who was suffering from a whole plethora of debilitating conditions would probably not have the wherewithal, the political acumen to do that. This appears to have been manipulated by powerful forces behind the throne, one of which was the head of the army. His name was General Horemheb. The other was the Grand Vizier, basically the prime minister, who incidentally was a member of the priesthood of the ancient religion, the old religion that had been banned, and his name was I. So Tutankhamun dies, leaving his widow, who was his half-sister, also a teenager. Her name is Ankhesenamun. The reason I say that he may have been murdered is recent examination of his mummy shows massive physical damage, including a fracture in his left leg that did not heal. There's no evidence of healing, so obviously it occurred right before death. Secondly, the heart was not in the mummy, and the Egyptians thought the heart the most important organ, so they would, remove it, wrap it, mummify it separately, and then return it to the chest cavity. So the question is, why wasn't the heart there? Was it sort of like, let's remove the heart so his spirit wouldn't go to their version of the afterlife?
Right.
Or was he injured far away? Long story short, while during excavations of Hattusis, which is in modern-day Turkey, that was where the Hittite Empire was, and that was Egypt's big rival. They found letters that appear to be written from Tutankhamun's widow, who said, "My husband has died. I have no son. I will not be forced to marry a servant. Send me one of your sons who will become king of Egypt." And the king of the Hittites writes back, "Yeah, right. I'm kind of not so sure about this." Obviously, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And she wrote another letter to this effect. We do know that the king of the Hittites sent one of his sons, who appears to have been murdered on the way to Egypt. And we also know that right after that incident, it touched off a 20-year war between Egypt and the Hittite Empire. Meanwhile, Ankhesenamun married the Grand Vizier Ai. Then she disappears from history. Even in Ai's tomb, which is very elaborate, no mention of Ankhesenamun anywhere. Then Ai dies a few years later, and General Horemheb becomes pharaoh. So it's very possibly that the military and the priesthood wanted to get rid of any trace of Akhenaten's family and what they considered their heresy. Plus, you had a physically disabled pharaoh that wasn't the macho man image to lead the army. And that's why a lot of evidence points to his death could have been an accident, his death could have been an illness, or his death could have been a very conveniently arranged accident, because in the wake of his passing, his entire family is not only eliminated, but blotted out from history.
What did Conan Doyle say about the King Tut and everything that was found, and what possibly might have happened to Tut?
Well, what Arthur Conan Doyle said was that the tomb was protected by elementals, which are nature spirits, and that the priests of the ancient Egyptian religion had put spells and conjured elementals to protect the pharaoh's tombs. But, you know, once again, and I'm a psychic medium, I've interfaced with thousands of spirits, including elementals. As far as I know, there's no evidence to support that. But, you know, when dealing with the eternal, we always have to keep an open mind.
Have you, as a medium, ever tried to connect with King Tut to find out what happened?
People ask me that question a lot, and my ability is not like Siri or Alexa, where I just, other side, summon King Tut. I need to have a connection with somebody who has a personal relationship with the people who died, because it is the client that draws people into the reading. But I was in close proximity to a number of Tutankhamun's artifacts from his tomb, and there was one thing that really touched me emotionally. It was the crown that he wore on a day-to-day basis. It was metal, and of course it had the cobra, the protective symbol, next to the vulture, which is another protective symbol of the pharaohs. And I was about maybe a foot away from it. You know, you couldn't touch it because it was in a glass case. But I got this sensation throughout my whole body of profound sadness, isolation, loneliness, and fear. Now, I'm not saying that I connected with the spirit of Tutankhamun. Maybe these were my own thoughts, but it felt very much like when I'm connecting with a spirit, and that spirit's transmitting to me something he or she experienced. So my thought is, this boy who became a teenager and then died may have been Pharaoh, may have been considered a living god, but he was one lonely, isolated person and constantly in physical pain.
You know, the real history and the real truth is much more interesting to me than the fiction that is out there. And that's what I love about bringing you on the show, Mark. You're real. You know, you call it as it is. There's no... You're just Mark. You know, you're just Mark Anthony. And you walk the walk and you talk the talk. And that is marvelous in these days and ages. So thank you for everything you've done over the years for so many people.
Well, it's my pleasure, Rob, and that's that's in part why I'm known as the Psychic Explorer, because I do examine ancient mysteries, mystical locations, and I don't go in and go, oh, there's spirits here and it's haunted and all this. Is like, no, I want to conduct my own research, my own investigation, plus my own spiritual contact with the site, because there's a lot of things that are beyond our current level of technology's ability to explain, and that includes the spiritual. And once again, when we are dealing with things like this, we have to approach it objectively and of course, with an open mind.
When you were talking about possible reasons for the curse, one of them was that the ancients may have spread uranium around the tomb. Where would they get uranium way back then, and how did they know what it was?
Well, that theory has not been substantiated, because from my understanding, there's never been any traces of radioactivity. These were all the fake news stories that were coming out in the 1920s and early 30s. And when Tutankhamun's tomb was discovered and the artifacts were being brought out of the tomb, this had a massive impact on society and pop culture. If you look at the Chrysler Building in New York City, that is an example of Egyptian-styled architecture, which was as a result of Tutankhamun's tomb. Then, meanwhile, Hollywood, 1932, The Mummy with Boris Karloff. And it's funny because actually on the 100th anniversary of the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, I watched The Mummy, the original version, and actually it was pretty good. I mean, I would say from a movie buff standpoint, but they did a very good job recreating the artwork and giving a plausibility to the Mummy and the Curse. But these are all things that were affected by the discovery of the tomb. And certainly the tomb answers a lot of questions, but then again, it increases even more questions, which I love. And the nice thing is, mysteries certainly make for an interesting discussion.
It certainly does, and just my own personal opinion on the Mummy movie. I think what made it part of its great success was that it was in black and white. I think that a lot of black and white movies, especially the ones that Hitchcock did, give so much more than the colored ones that we have right now. But I don't know. Much more to come in these days. And Mark, first of all, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us. Always a great pleasure talking to you, my friend. Safe travels. And we didn't get any time to talk about National UFO Day, which is, let me see here. When is it, Mark?
I think it's in the early part of July, because the Roswell incident occurred on July 2nd of 1947.
Yes.
And I believe that is also World UFO Day.
Right.
And so even though we're talking about Tutankhamun, which to me is timeless, but then again, so is Roswell. So I guess I'm just going to have to come back to the X Zone to talk about UFOs.
We would love that. We would love that, Mark. You're always welcomed here. I consider you a good friend. And take care of yourself. And thank everybody at your where you are for always helping us to do a great show. Thanks, Mark. Take care.
Thanks, Rob. Many blessings.
Many blessings to you, my friend. Medium Mark Anthony's website is afterlifefrequency.com, and we'll be back on the other side of the top of the hour with guest number 2 tonight here on the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220.
They said, I bet they'll never